This is the theory video. You get 2 videos each month. One of them is telling you what it is we're teaching, why it's important, and how it all works. The second video is when we actually put it into practice. It's when we get our hands dirty. In this instance, we're teaching the subject of music, getting your music library ready so that in the coming months, you're going to be running where others who haven't done this are simply going to be walking. It's a bit of a dry subject, but that said, our DJ Music Library Blueprint is an awesome way of teaching it, and it'll get your library to the point where it's really fit for purpose, and you're really loving using that library every day. So what do we mean by the DJ Library Blueprint? Well, the DJ Library Blueprint is initially sorting out your library. It's just getting it to a point where it's just your DJ music and it's how you want it to be. From there on in, it's maintaining your library. And from there on in, it's preparing your music so that when you're playing it, it's exactly how you want it. You can get your music quickly and everything's how it should be. So it's all those 3 things, getting it right, maintaining it, and then being able to play that music when you get to your gigs really efficiently. So let's drill a little bit deeper into what we mean by those things. So to start with, sorting out your library. What do we mean by that? Well, your music library is not the same as your stuff you listen to in your general life. Your DJ music library is very focused on just the stuff you need for DJing. It's only the right songs in your collection for the kind of DJ gigs you play. There is no room in that collection for anything else. So we're not talking about collecting whole albums. We're not talking about collecting all the assembled works of a particular artist or label you like. And we're certainly not talking about keeping all that music you collected as a student in there just for the sake of it. We're talking about only keeping the tracks in there that you can feasibly see yourself DJing with. It's a crucial difference. It's also file formats and preparation of that music. Just because you've got yourself to a point where the music's great, you also need to ensure that the music sounds great and it's in the formats you can use and it's prepared properly so that you can make the most of it. And it's also about keeping that music safe. If you can't keep your music so that if you suffer a hard drive crash or your laptop gets stolen or whatever, if you can't get to a point where that doesn't matter, you can get it back quickly and everything's going to be cool, then you're going to be in trouble, especially when it's DJ music and it's something you might well be making money out of playing, but certainly is very, very valuable to you. So that's what we mean by sorting out your library. So what do we mean by maintaining your library? Well, when you've got it all up and running, everything's how it should be, the last thing you want to do is let that slip. And so the DJ Music Library Blueprint looks at ways of organizing your library so it's working for you and it's not baffling you and it's not kind of like overwhelming you. Ways of backing your library up once you've got that initial safety first mindset of keeping that going, backing it up regularly so your music is always safe, because there's no point setting it up and then not doing it. So we'll build that into the system. And also ways of actually listening to your music. It's all very well having everything organized, but if you're not actually getting to know that music, what's the point? And preparing for and playing your gigs. What do we mean by that? Well, in order to play great gigs, you need great set lists. So we're going to look at how to do that. We're going to look at analyzing your music in your DJ software so it's ready to DJ with. And we're going to look at the system for getting your hands on the right tune to play next when you're actually DJing. When the rubbers hit the road and you are performing, we're going to make sure that you've got all the systems in place so that you can get your hands on the tune you want to play quickly. So that's what we mean by preparing and playing for gigs. And that is what the DJ Music Library Blueprint is all about. Now, as I said at the beginning, some people will kind of like sigh and say, God, this is dry stuff. But the point is that it's important stuff. Why is it important? Well, it starts to help build your identity as a DJ. Having a great DJ music library that you've taken the time to sort out, get rid of all the stuff that isn't what you are as a DJ, will leave behind what you are as a DJ. These are the tunes that matter to you. These are the tunes that you want to share with people. These are the tunes that work on a dance floor. These are the tunes you've worked hard to get into your collection. Having this library properly organized and properly set up helps you to build that DJ identity. It helps to make it all real for you. And it doesn't only help to make you feel like a DJ, it actually connects you to the tunes. Now, if you think back, if you are a DJ who's played on vinyl or on CDs, you'll know this. But if you're not, think back to when DJs had to buy music and had to collect music and it was physical. You could open a gatefold record and you could look at the sleeve notes and so on. You had all your music on a shelf. It was real. It was tactile. You could touch it. You could own it. Now, with digital files, you don't have that. But the DJ Music Library Blueprint teaches you a way of getting that back. It teaches you a way of really getting to know your tunes, of really feeling connected to them, of knowing they're safe, knowing that you really own them. And this is reinstalling in the digital generation the stuff that vinyl and CD DJs kind of knew intrinsically. Now, as well as all that, it helps you to enjoy your practice sessions. Because if your music's properly organized and you do some of the tricks I'm going to tell you about in a minute, you will find that your practice sessions are exponentially more fun. You're getting your hands on what you want. You're being able to organize music in ways that help you make the next mixtape or play the next gig better or do the DJ show that you're planning to do online later on or whatever. It helps you to practice in a more fun and creative way by organizing your music properly. Now, before a gig, you're going to be nervous. The system we teach you helps to alleviate those nerves by giving you a really, really good set of music to choose from when you get to your gig. It's all built into the system. It's the way you will organize your music when you've learned the DJ Music Library blueprint. There'll be no more turning up at gigs and looking at your whole library, wondering what to play next. And finally, when you are at your gigs, it's going to make playing the next tune more easily, as I mentioned a second ago, because this system allows you to very, very quickly drill down to what's in your head and find the actual file in order to be able to play it. So that's why this stuff is all important. Now, we're going to move on to the how. This is how the DJ Music Library blueprint works, and this is what you're going to be doing in your arranging, fixing your music library in the next video when we get down to it. Just to remind you, I don't want you to do this stuff now. If you've got a notepad nearby, great. If you haven't, grab one. Pause the video, make notes, think about how this applies to you. Not all of this is going to apply in the same way to everyone watching or listening to this, but do not do it now. You need to understand this blueprint before you try and put it into practice. Organizing your music library is not easy. And if you don't understand why you're doing it, you will come unstuck and there'll be a fog where there should be, a clear vision. So please just let this soak in before doing anything. We've got lots of time in the next video to actually start doing it. So it's a 4-part process. Part 1 is getting to the right number of tunes in the first place, getting that collection lean and clean. Part 2 is quality controlling those tunes, getting those tunes fit for purpose. Part 3 is organizing those tunes so that they are easier to get your hands on when you need them, both in your practice and in your DJ gigs. And part 4 is technically preparing those tunes for DJing, for actually using in your DJ sets. What you have to do past owning them and past having them organized to make them the most useful for your DJing. So these are the 4 areas that we're going to cover in that order as you implement the DJ Music Library blueprint in your DJing. Let's look more closely at each of them. So to get to the right number of tunes, just what you truly might DJ with. What this number is will depend entirely upon you, whether you play 1 gig a year or 5 gigs a week. The actual physical number of tunes will be different, but the point is these all have to be tunes that you're pretty sure that you're going to want to DJ with at some point in the short to medium future. So how do we get to that point? Well, if you're sat there now with a completely disorganized music collection, you kind of got two choices. You can either throw everything out, and by throw everything out, I mean just put it somewhere, away from your DJ collection and start again by putting tunes back in one by one, or you can start trimming what you've got in order to turn it into the collection that you really ought to have by cutting out the dead wood in that way. Which one you choose will kind of depend upon what kind of a mess your collection's in and various other factors. But they're the 2 ways you get to having this core of music that is the actual stuff you want in there and everything else somewhere else where it's not interfering. The second thing you have to do is to get everything in the same format and in the same place. Now, this means digital. The format, we want everything digital. We don't want to be carrying around records and CDs as digital DJs. So we need to have everything digitized. That could mean ripping music, or it could mean buying digital files again of stuff that's going to take you too long to rip or whatever. But also, it means just getting it all in one place. If you've got stuff on different computers at work, on your laptop, on another computer, or even in different places on the same one, it's getting everything in one place. It's getting everything so that it's at least accessible to you at the same time when you're sat down to do this stuff. So we're going to be trimming it, but we're also going to be putting it all in the same pile, if you like. So once we've got to the right number of tunes, we're going to quality control those tunes. It's not enough just to have all the music you want in a big pile. We need to check that it's fit for purpose. So the way we do that is by checking the technical quality. We want to be weeding out really low quality digital files, but also checking that they sound all right to us. Just because something kind of says it's a high quality file, it doesn't mean it is. There's loads and loads of reasons why that might not be the case. So we're going to be trusting our ears and trusting our speakers, turning stuff up to listen to it and make sure it's okay. We're going to be making sure that the data connected to our tunes is correct, the metadata. So this means things like the title, the artist, the year, the genre, all that kind of stuff, the artwork if we use it. That's got to be there and it's got to be correct, because if it isn't, it's going to trip us up down the line. So we need to make sure that every tune in our collection has got that stuff, and that stuff is accurate and it's the stuff we want. And we're going to be getting in place that backup solution. Unless you're backing your music up, you don't really own it. It's so important to have that in place. So we're going to be looking at the options for getting that in place. You need this stuff before we move on to the next section. You're going to need to know how to organize your tunes. So you're going to learn about organizing your tunes in all kinds of ways. The most obvious way and the simplest way is sorting your tunes just by clicking on columns. You have a window open with lots of tunes listed in it, and by clicking on a column, for instance, genre, you sort that window into big chunks of different genres. You can do the same for year, an artist, and so on. It's an easy way of quickly sorting your tunes that with vinyl would have taken you a long time. Now, something that is impossible to do with vinyl or with CDs, because you only have one physical copy of each, is having playlists. A playlist is where you have a separate list of tunes full of stuff which also exists in your main library. So you can have an instance of a tune in all kinds of playlists, and it's also in your main library. So in other words, you kind of got virtual copies of your music knocking around. Now this makes playlists really valuable. There's a few kinds of playlists that you're going to need and that I'm going to teach you about and show you in your software. The first one is a general playlist. A general playlist is a kind of long-term playlist that you have for a particular purpose. It might be for collecting everything that you like to play at a certain venue. You know, you see the venue in your head and you have a whole list of tunes that you know work there. It might be for certain types of gigs. If you're an underground house DJ who also plays weddings, well, you're going to want separate big general playlists for both of those purposes. They could also be, you know, smaller, not quite so large scale. You could be collecting tunes that you just think fit a certain mood, you know, a disco-y vibe or a down-tempo-y vibe or a certain type of tune that just you feel fit together. They're your general playlists. But there's another type of playlist that you need to know about, which I'm going to show you how to make, which is your next gig playlist. Now, this is a specialized kind of playlist, and it is a real secret weapon of DJs who know their stuff. This is where you have a gig in the near future, and you know exactly where it is. You've got a good idea who you're going to be playing to, what you've been asked to do, the hours you're going to be playing, how long it is, and so on. And you put a whole chunk of music together that you think you're likely to want to play in that particular gig. And these are different from the general playlist because after the gig, they're immediately old. They're gone. You can archive them. You know, they've done their job. And these playlists are vitally important, so we'll talk about making those. Now, we're going to talk about the different technical kinds of playlists that you can make as well. You can make playlists that are totally manual, where they don't change if you don't put stuff in or take stuff out of them. And you can also have playlists which are called smart playlists or crates, smart crates or intelligent crates or that kind of thing. And these are the playlists that, due to the awesomeness of today's software, you can tell to behave in a certain way. You can set rules for them. So, for instance, you could say, give me everything from the 1990s marked rock from the UK. And then all your Britpop music, a big scene in the UK in the 90s, will suddenly appear there. But more importantly, as you add and take stuff away from your collection in general, tunes will arrive and leave that playlist automatically. You won't have to keep updating it. And there's lots and lots of other ways you can use those playlists. You can have playlists of stuff you haven't listened to for a few months, for instance. Or as soon as you listen to a track, it leaves that playlist. So you can be keeping on top of your music. Remember earlier I was talking about finding ways of listening to your music. Smart playlists are a great way of pulling out stuff that maybe you haven't heard for a while or for other reasons you want to hear. All these playlists, and especially if you do what all DJs end up doing, which is making, you know, once you get into playlist, you can get a bit playlist happy. You have lots of playlists knocking around with like 3 or 4 tracks in that you just know mix well together, and you just don't want to forget that connection. So you can end up with dozens of playlists. It can all get a bit overwhelming in your DJ software or in your music library software. So the DJ Music Library Blueprint teaches you ways of tactics of getting on top of all of that, of organizing your playlist into kind of high level areas where you feel everything's calm and everything's how it should be when you get into your DJ software, but you can drill down and find what you want. And we do this by nesting our playlists into folders and into a kind of system. And the DJ Music Library Blueprint, once you've done all this stuff, shows you ways of hearing your music more often. So this is ways to utilize digital in order to be able to listen to your music on the go, to listen to it in multiple locations, and so on. So you can have your music playing when you're not practicing or when you're not DJing. So you're getting to know your music better. That's all to come. So we've got all our music in one place. We've got only the stuff we want. We've organized it to the nth degree. We're listening to it all the time. Everything's cool, but we've now got to go and DJ. So the final section, the final part of how we do this is the technical preparation for DJing, often called analyzing your music. This happens generally in your DJ software. And your DJ software will very cleverly look at your tunes when you add them to it or when you ask it to look at them if you're doing it manually, and it will find out stuff about them. It might calculate the musical key, the BPM, it might calculate the volume of the tune, the relative volumes to give you a waveform, all kinds of stuff. In order to do that properly, you need to really understand what it's doing and what parameters have been set around that. And we're going to talk to you about how to set it so it is more likely to guess the BPM correctly, that it does what you want with things like the musical key, because you might be using software, which we're going to be looking at in the next video, to calculate your musical key in order to harmonically mix your music away from your DJ software. So the last thing you want is your DJ software accidentally destroying all that good work. So we're going to look at all the pitfalls of analyzing your music so that everything happens how you want it to happen, in tune with the way you're doing your own personal musical library blueprint. We're also going to look at where your DJ software stores all this goodness, because once it's analyzed your music, it's got to put that stuff somewhere, and it doesn't always put it in the music file. You know, your music file's got maybe a bit of artwork, it's got a title, it's got the year and all that stuff I talked about earlier. A lot of the time, that's stored right there in the file. You pick the file up and put it somewhere else, all that goes with it. Not so with a lot of the data your DJ software works out. It keeps it somewhere separately. So it's vital that you know that, because if you don't know that, you can't back that up, and there's a chance you're going to lose it. It's just as important as the file itself, because you might have done an awful lot of work on your music in your DJ software. You really don't want to lose that. So we're going to look at where your DJ software stores that stuff and how to add it to your backup. Now, anything that's automated might go wrong. So it's vitally important that you correct any errors in the analysis of your music in your DJ software. If you don't, you might end up discovering those errors in the middle of a mix when the whole world can hear it. So we're going to look at ways of correcting any errors that might have happened. And finally, I'm going to give you a devilishly simple but awesomely effective trick that you should be doing every single time you add a new tune into your collection for DJing at this point. And that is, I'll explain it by going back to the days of vinyl. In the days of vinyl, you would take a record out, you'd put it on the turntable, you'd put the needle on, and you would cue it up, which means getting to the place where you wanted to start and leaving it sat there ready so that you could start it bang on that beat or wherever. That's queuing up where you're going to start that track from. And if you play the track 200 times, there'd actually be a bit of noise in the groove because you queued it up there so many times that it actually has started to damage a bit there, because we always start our tracks playing at the same time, same place, 9 times out of 10. So the digital version of that, we're going to teach you that at the very end of the blueprint. So every time you load a track that you love, it's ready. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to do any preparation. So you're like this. You're getting your music, not only finding the track you want to play, but getting it ready to play in lightning speed. So that's how we end off the DJ Music Library Blueprint, and that's what we're going to be going into in more detail in the practice video that follows this one. This is the theory video. You get 2 videos each month.